Hope you like the new intro. That picture is the Lobster Phone by who else apart from Salvador Dali. I love surreal art, so there'll probably be more changes on the intro. Max Ernst is another favourite, so there'll be some of that as well. Anyway, to get to the main point of this, I'm going to be talking about how the will to live influences, well, it influences everything obviously because it's our main driver, but obviously it influences the sexual activity of creatures a great deal. Now, the will to live is our primary driver. It's what essentially brought us into being. Our parents had sexual drives obviously, and we were born or conceived at the height of a passion that is probably the most intense passion that human beings normally experience. The sex drive is just a dominating thing, and it's a dominating thing for a good reason. The will to live needs to make sure that new generations of creatures are created, and it's not particularly interested in individual creatures. It's very, very interested in the continuation of the species, however. So the will to live clearly is going to be manifested through the sex drive in a very powerful manner. And this is what we find. A young man in his 20s, a young woman in her 20s, they're almost totally dominated by that drive, and it will colour most of their behaviour. So I'm married to a psychologist, and that's fairly useful for me because I get to pick up on a lot of things that are fairly useful for me. And I want to talk about how males and females typically behave. And as you can see on the picture, there's a sparrow, and I'll get to the sparrows in a moment because they are this wonderful archetype for how the sexes behave. So let's talk about men and males in general in many species, not all of course, but many. And males are driven to distribute their sperm as widely as they can. And so young men are usually, at least anyway, very promiscuous. And the driver for them is to spread their sperm as wide as they can. And the guys who are, sort of the alpha males get to do that. And an alpha male achieves that status in different ways. In one part of society, it may be the guy who's the cock in the local pub, the guy who can beat everybody else at a fight, and he struts his stuff, and the women are attracted to that. And he will have his pick usually of the women, maybe. Or in another section of society, it may be the guy who's got the biggest bank account. And it really depends. It varies. I know in academic circles that professors very often get female students, making approaches to them. It really depends where the prestige is measured or how it's measured. Is it physical strength? Is it intellectual capability? Is it the size of your bank account? Anyway, whatever determines that a man is an alpha male will then give him access to a larger group of females. For those males who don't achieve that status, well, they have to do other stuff. Maybe their choice of sexual partners is not as great. And some males actually do rather well by doing the victim bit. Females will feel sorry for them and bestow sexual favours for that reason. So it's all fairly complex. But anyway, males want to distribute their sperm as widely as possible. Now, females typically want sperm from the alpha male. They want their kids to be, possibly if it's physical, then they want their kids to have the strongest physical traits, the strongest physical survival opportunity. Or if a woman is looking at a guy's bank balance, and it may be that the kids are reared in a very prosperous environment, so they get the best health care, they get the best education, and so on. So it really all depends, but women typically are looking for and the measures will vary, but they're looking for the alpha male to give their progeny the best opportunity in life. Now, this can all start to sound a bit sexist. I'm sorry about this, but this is, I haven't made this up. This is just the way it very often is. However, you do get men that will look for effectively an alpha female. And the alpha female may be some woman who's a successful businesswoman. And it's very common for young men to flatter older women who are wealthy, looking for money basically. They're not, unfortunately, predominantly looking to mate with a woman of that nature. Now, you can see the sparrows on that picture mating. And sparrows have a very particular behavior that is very often used as a model for human sexual behavior. And here's how it works. The female sparrows go looking for the John Travolta of sparrows, of male sparrows. They go looking for the alpha male sparrow because they want the best quality semen. Money and all that stuff obviously doesn't mean anything to sparrows. Might do to Donald Trump sparrows, but not to sparrows in general. So the female is looking for the alpha male, the John Travolta, and she will offer herself to him for mating, and he will oblige. He just wants to distribute his sperm all over the place, as many females as possible. Once she's been inseminated, and once she knows she's been inseminated, she will then go looking for a much weaker male, one that typically doesn't get many mating opportunities. And that less than alpha male will of course think all his Christmases have come at once, and when she offers herself for mating, he will think, whoa, it's my lucky day, and he will mate. But what he doesn't know is that she's already inseminated by the alpha male. And then when she lays eggs, he thinks that they're his eggs. This poor sucker that has been effectively conned by this female sparrow, then helps to look after the eggs and feed the chicks and so on and build a nest. And that is what happens. That is the way sparrows behave. And it's very often used as a model. And I know I'm going to be in trouble for talking about all this, but it is used as a model very often for relationships between men and women in human society. As I say, not everybody's like this, and I'll get onto that a little bit later. Now, what I've described there is the cunning and the intelligence of this will to live. I say intelligence. It's not really intelligence, it's not conscious. The will to live is a blind thing. It's like the force of gravity. It just pushes and pushes and pushes. And all the creatures that are manifested through it, every kind of animal, every kind of plant, every kind of insect and so on, just behaves according to this will to live and does whatever it needs to do to ensure that the next generation is created and looked after. And then, once, certainly in human life, once people get to a certain age, then, for women, for example, when they get into their 50s, find that they're no longer fertile. It's a big thing for women very often to find that. And nature has finished with them. Same with men. Men can get to the age of, similar sort of age. Men in their 60s very often find that they lose their sexual drive. Or can't get an erection or whatever. Nature has finished with them. They've done their job, which is to create the next generation. And this is all the will to live is interested in. It's interested in the survival of the species, which means that each individual creature has to have this will to live, and as far as possible will disadvantage any other creature in order to achieve that. But also, more importantly, the species, because of that individual drive, is guaranteed to survive, and particularly through the sex drive, which makes sure that there's always a new generation that can be created and to carry on the whole circus, because that's basically what it is. So when we come to human behavior, then You probably know that in 30 to 50%, and it depends which country you're looking at, but 30 to 50% of married couples cheat on their partners. This is how intense this sex drive is, because males still want to inseminate as many females as possible, and the females still want to conceive by the alpha male. Being married doesn't stop that. And no matter how much heartache and suffering it causes, people will cheat on each other, driven by that force. I'm not being judgmental here, because the will to live is a blind force. It has no morals, no conscience. It just wants to propagate future generations. End of story. And it wants to generate future generations that are as strong and as viable as possible. It's blind. It's totally blind. There's no intelligence. There's no feeling. There's no compassion. No nothing in that as far as an individual creature is concerned. So the cheating thing, which you would expect in business, people cheat in business all the time. In fact, as I mentioned in another video, someone once said to me, you cannot be successful in business unless in some way you are slightly morally bankrupt, unless you're some kind of criminal, fraudster, cheat, liar. All those things are needed to succeed in business. I know, because I did it. Not proud of it, but I did it. But when it comes to personal relationships between two people who not only sworn an oath to each other, but have an intimate relationship, and then to find that one of them is going behind the other's back and having sexual relationships with other people, that's a devastating thing. And you have to ask why we react to that so dramatically. Well, I'm afraid it's still the will to live. That hurt and anger that's very often caused by people cheating on one person, cheating on another, is basically all about, largely, to a large extent, sexual jealousy. That the partner has gone off and possibly might be inseminated by another male, or the male has gone off and inseminated another woman, and he might have to share his resources with the other woman. Or, of course, men and women can change roles in that. But sexual jealousy is a very, very powerful thing. As you know, in France they have the crimes of passion. They recognize that this is such a strong thing that they have a special sentence that is based on crimes of passion rather than just pure murder or whatever. So this is all animal behavior. This is how people behave in the main, but not everybody behaves like this. And why is it that some people don't behave like this? Well, it's because, and I've mentioned this in other videos, it's possible for a person to develop a level of intelligence where they look at what's going on and just look at it and say, yeah, I can see this drive in me. I can see this will to life in me and everybody else. And actually, here's a result of what it does for individuals. This will to life does not serve you at all. It's only interested in the species and in its own future generations. And as Gurdjieff says, we have to become total egoists. We have to think about what is it that we're getting out of this. And we look at ourselves and we look at other people, and maybe we develop some compassion, both for ourselves and for other people. Where does that come from? Well, according to Gurdjieff, we have data within us that connects us to conscience. And conscience is something divine. All the animal drivers and so on are blind. There's no conscience in those. They will just do whatever they do. Lions will rip apart wild boars or deer while they're alive and eat them. The savagery is just endless. So the will to life has no real compassion or intelligence about it, but human beings can look at it all and say, well, you know what? At an individual level, this sucks. So maybe I don't want to behave like that. And it may not be formulated in exactly those words, but those are the kind of feelings that we start to feel. So, I'm not going to go on anymore. Sexual behavior is just an overwhelming factor in human life, and that drive is so strong that people are driven to do all kinds of things. And lying and cheating and even murder are part of the game to ensure that the next generation of the species is the strongest possible one.